were on duty Sunday. So, David, I mean...
This guy is outraged, and he ought to be outraged. He's been exposed to a disease that kills 70% of the people in a horrific way. His family has been exposed now indirectly because there's also a possibility that it could travel to them. This is something people need to get angry about. They need to demand that these people are going to do something. We've seen them just pull back and allow undocumented Democrats to come in over the borders, not do anything about any of this, pretend that they've got the borders sealed, pretend that they've got everything under control with the CDC. They clearly are just trying to preserve their careers. These are people who, like Obama, have never, ever done anything in their life other than run for political office or get a political position. And so these people at the top are trying to assuage everybody's concerns about this while they do absolutely nothing. It's the people who are not even involved with the CDC that are doing things. People need to be aware of what the dangers are for themselves individually. Your government, as usual, is not going to be there to protect you. You need to take your own precautions. But now, before it affects somebody in your family, now is the time for people to get angry and to contact these people and demand that they do something. They're asleep at the wheel.
I mean, how long before we start to call for the head of the CDC to be fired over this? I mean, heads need to roll, surely.
That would be the very least. And, of course, there was the article from on Infowars.com earlier today about how Obama, back in 2010, quietly rolled back precautions that would be in place for just this type of thing. At the time, they were worried about bird flu. And, of course, we had 21 million people killed and die in 1918, far more than died in World War I because of flu. And that was transmitted because of people returning home from areas where there was a war. And so it's that kind of travel. Today, we have a very dynamic world where people are traveling across the globe in very short periods of time. I mean, back in 1918, if you had an Ebola situation like this, many people on board a ship would have already been showing symptoms before they got to the United States, probably. But today, they can do it in just a few hours. And so that's something that is of great concern. So they had regulations in place that would have required the airlines to keep additional records so that they could go back and do contact tracing in case something showed up. That was pushed back by the airline industries. The American Civil Liberties Union was concerned that there were going to be records kept of people. That was before we learned about Ed Snowden. That was before we learned that they're keeping records on everything. Of course, the only thing that they really are not going to stop keeping records on is anything related to political power. They want to know everything about who is a threat to them politically, but they don't want to know anything about something that would protect the American people.
And going back to the airliners, obviously the CDC has come out repeatedly, said they're not going to call to block any airlines. As far as I understand it, David, the direct flights from West Africa, do they go into Washington Dulles?
Well, it's not clear. I mean, there's a lot of different airlines that will go. Usually there are intermediate stops. Usually there's at least 2 to 3 stops when you're looking at traveling from Liberia to Dallas, for example. If you're going to an East Coast city, you might get there in just one hop. I don't know that there's any direct flights going from East Coast cities to Western Africa. I'm not sure. But the issue is that the airlines know when you get on a plane, they know what your itinerary is there. But there's other methods that they could do. If they were to keep track of people's, if they were just to hold the records of people that had traveled on planes, then if something were to happen like this, they could backtrack it and look at contact information, which would be something that would actually benefit the people who had been on the plane. It would be something that in retrospect would be helpful to them. As you mentioned, when you traveled and there was a concern about flu, they came onto the plane where you were a passenger. Where was that, China or mainland China? Yeah. They came onto the plane in hazmat suits and checked people for temperature and that sort of thing. So there's certain things that they could do. Nothing is 100% certain, but there's things that they could do to minimize the risk. And that's the point. You're never going to have anything that you do that's going to be 100% effective, but you can do your best to try to minimize the risk. They're not even concerned about that.
Breaking news as well out of Politico. Bobby Jindal, Louisiana governor, banned travel from Ebola nations. He's calling on the Obama administration to impose a travel ban on flights coming to the US from countries with Ebola outbreaks. So prominent individuals now starting to call for that. We'll cover Hong Kong, the internet, more news coming up. Obviously, we're going to dip back into Ebola. Your calls as well coming up at 800-259-9231. This is the Alex Jones Show live, Infowars.com. Your calls straight ahead. Keep it locked in.
The feds are trying to ban your right to own body armor. It is crucial to purchase your body armor before it is too late and another one of your rights are taken away. Cady Armor has the most affordable Level 3 armor on the market today. Cady Armor withstands up to 7.62 NATO rounds. Don't have your own body armor yet? Hurry before it's too late. Order yours at CadyArmor.com. That's CATI Armor.com. Come and take it. Get some.
Hey, Boomer! I learned in school today that 60% of our bodies are made of water. Good thing we have the Berkey system. It's the cleanest, best water ever. Mom says it's because the Berkey's filtration system cleans out the bad stuff and leaves only pure, delicious water. I know, right? You love it too. Yeah, I'm thirsty too. Let's go get some. Get Berkey clean water by calling 877-886-3653. That's 877-886-3653. Or visit GoBerkey.com.
DNA Force. When cells become toxic, they die early and aging sets in. DNA Force. No one has put together a formula that focuses directly on brain health, nerve growth factors, and optimizing your cellular energy at the same time. Just one of the key compounds, BioPQQ, is backed by major clinical studies. DNA Force. We now have the synergistic solution. Secure your DNA Force today at InfoWarsLife.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139. DNA Force. After consulting top doctors, nutritionists, pharmacists, and others, we have developed what I believe is the ultimate non-GMO organic Super Male Vitality formula. Super Male Vitality by InfoWars Life is so powerful that I only take half the recommended dose.
I jump out of bed ready to fight these criminals every day. I look forward to waking up and taking my Super Male Vitality.
Visit InfoWarsLife.com today to secure your Super Male Vitality and other powerful products from InfoWars Life.
What good is a Big Berkey water filter?
We get that question a lot here at BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com. And in a word, the answer is protection. Protection from water main breaks, E. coli contamination, environmental chemical spills, pesticide runoff, chlorine taste and smell, and all forms of fluoride. Plus, Big Berkey water filters are the original gravity water filter system and most trusted on the market for a reason. Tested by multiple independent NSF EPA certified labs, they are the gold standard in water purification. At only 1.7 cents a gallon, a single set of filters can last for 5 to 10 years. That means big savings. Big Berkey, the one that's powerful enough to purify stagnant pond water. Get a Big Berkey today at BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com. GCN listeners receive 5% off all ceramic filter systems. Visit our website or call 1-877-99-BERKEY. That's 877-99-BERKEY. Big Berkey Water Filters, for the love of clean water.
The most important thing you should have next to water and food is a safe, storable fuel supply for your preparedness needs. Spare fuel is the answer. With the harsh, bitterly cold winter that's predicted this year, it's more important than ever to have spare fuel on hand. Spare fuel can be used in any gas-powered vehicle or generator. It's also perfect for chainsaws, tractors, and other small gas engines. Use spare fuel alone or mix it with any amount of regular gasoline to extend the supply of gas you do have on hand. Spare fuel is absolutely essential for unforeseen emergencies. Store spare fuel in your vehicle's trunk or cargo bay and use it in case you run out of gas on the highway. Unlike gasoline, spare fuel is also safe to store with your other supplies, and it can be stored for many, many years. For a special bulk pricing, go to GetSpareFuel.com. That's GetSpareFuel.com now.
Friday edition of the Alex Jones Show with me, your host, Paul Joseph Watson, joined by David Knight in studio. We're just going to dip back into the latest Ebola news. David, we had this revocation of this 2010 CDC measure, which kind of would have protected, to some extent, America against potential Ebola victims coming in from outside the country. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this is the original article back in 2010 from USA Today. It says Obama administration scraps quarantine regulations, and they start out by saying that the Obama administration quietly scrapped plans to enact sweeping new federal quarantine regulations. These were regulations that they'd proposed back in 2005. It would have given the federal government additional powers to detain sick airline passengers, and it would have required that airlines report passengers that are sick to the CDC and require that they collect and maintain contact information for flyers if they later need it to be traced. Now, this was removed under the pretense that, well, we don't want to violate anybody's privacy. Look, they're looking at everybody's records when you buy your plane tickets. They're completely investigating your background. They're keeping that information. And, of course, we subsequently learned after 2010, we had been telling people this for quite some time, but now there's no question about it, that our government is spying on every detail of our life. This isn't a privacy issue. This is something that could actually help people who were flying on the plane with someone who is sick. But, of course, that was scrapped 4 years ago. And now we see that that's exactly the type of thing that needs to be done. But, of course, the federal officials are not interested in that. Rather, they're taking a very cavalier attitude about that. There's some breaking news about what's going on in the schools there in Dallas. I saw this one. This is an article, I think it's up on Drudge from the Telegraph in the UK. And they were talking about missteps that had happened over just the last few days already with this Ebola patient in Dallas. And one of the things that they said was that 5 children who went to 4 local schools in the area that had direct contact with him were only pulled out of school on Wednesday, on the 30th. Now, you know, he went back in anywhere from 2 to 3 days before that. They knew that he had Ebola. And this is about the time that they're doing the press conference, talking about how professional everything has been. Yet for 2 days, they allow these kids to continue to go to school there in Dallas. And they point out that one of the schools is only a few hundred yards from the apartment where he lived. And they were just out there blowing, you know, just cleaning yesterday the sidewalk there where he had been sick and throwing up and just, you know, spraying that around with a pressure washer, you know. I mean, it's just amazing to see what they are doing and what they're not doing.
And as David mentioned there, this is a tweet from WFAA, and that was, again, the same news organization that provided us with a picture of the pressure washer cleaners hosing down the Ebola sick, wearing no protective gear whatsoever. A tweet out of reporter Sebastian Robertson, breaking Dallas company to install 5 remote temperature monitors to 5 schools with potential Ebola exposure. So, David, we know that this Ebola victim had contact with numerous children. There was concern about that several days ago. What does it tell us now that these 5 schools are installing remote temperature monitors in the Dallas area?
Well, it's been a day late and a dollar short from the very beginning, hasn't it? I mean, they're not getting up to speed nearly quickly enough. They're not being precautious enough. They're coming into this with an attitude that everything is under control. We're professionals. We know everything. They're trying to protect their jobs. These bureaucrats need to understand that if this pandemic gets out of hand, they're going to die along with the rest of us. They're not going to have their pass into the underground bunker with Obama. I think Chris Matthews kind of realized that the other day when he said, wait a minute, Obama promised this wasn't going to happen. And that was just a couple of weeks ago when he was at the CDC. It's a very unusual step for a president to go to the CDC in the first place. But, you know, this is the sort of thing that they need to take precautions on. They were talking about what happened in the kind of an hour-by-hour breakdown of what had happened. This is a Washington Post story where they interviewed one of the people that's in his family, and she was talking about how she's actually the daughter of the person that he was living with, and she said that she went down to Walmart, bought him a blanket, brought it back, and she said she knew, because her family and friends are from Liberia, she knew how it started, that it starts with, and this is very important, listen to this, it starts with muscle pain and red eyes as well as fever. So when she saw all 3 of these things present, she pretty much knew that he had Ebola. And she was the one who contacted the ambulance. Again, he didn't want to go because they had just sent him away essentially with some antibiotics. In other words, take a couple aspirins and, you know, call us in the morning, that type of thing. But she was the one who contacted the crews, and her children were some of the children that came in direct contact with him.
We're going to cover this and more after the break. We're going to dip into some geopolitical news as well as the UN's latest attempt to control the internet. Going to go to your calls, 1-800-259-9231. I'm Paul Joseph Watson. David Knight also in studio. This is the Alex Jones Show live, Infowars.com. Stay tuned.
We're on the march.